Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Closing the Context Gap, How Cribl Delivers Trusted Conversational AI with dbt and Omni. We're really glad you're here, and we're excited to share a practical story of what it takes to get AI analytics that teams can actually trust. Before we jump in, a little bit of housekeeping to talk about. First, on the QA side, please use the QA tab for all of your questions. We have dbt product experts standing by to respond as we go. So please keep your questions coming in. Secondly, chat. Use the chat tab for any banter that comes up. Say hello, connect with others. Let us know what parts are resonating with you. We'd love to hear from you about that. Um, Also, keep in mind, everyone is here to learn, so please be kind to your fellow attendees, right? Ask tough questions and share feedback. We genuinely want to hear that, but let's keep it both respectful and inclusive. 24 hours after we conclude, we'll share a recording for the event. And right after this session, you'll see a short survey. Please take a minute to fill that out. Your feedback is very valuable to us. It helps us improve these sessions and choose future topics. So let's get into it. So our speakers today. First, I'm Kyle Dempsey. I lead our technical ecosystem here at dbt Labs as the Senior Director of Partner Solutions. Now I'll hand it off to my other two presenters to introduce themselves.
Thanks so much. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Priya Gupta. I am the head of data at Cribl, where I run the centralized data function. And I've been at Cribl for a little bit over 4.5 years, initially hired as the first data person to really build out the data vision from scratch.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Chris Merrick. I'm co-founder CTO here at Omni Analytics. Fun fact about me is that prior to working here at Omni, I was involved with the creation of dbt. My lasting claim to fame in the dbt community is that I was actually the first committer on the dbt open source repository.
Priya and Chris, thank you both for being here. Really looking forward to the conversation. Before we jump into Cribl's story, I want to start out with how dbt and Omni work together to power continuous data cycles to deliver reliable and trustworthy AI outputs. So at dbt, we know that data leaders and practitioners are under real pressure to show progress with AI, as I'm sure many of you are or have heard as well. Stakeholders want faster answers. We've also kind of changed the dynamic of what it means to be self-service through AI. And real productivity gains for the business are critically important, especially with things like trust and governance built in. One of the top priorities that we hear from data leaders is to deliver trusted conversational analytics safely and cost effectively. But this is a real challenge for data leaders, right? Including trust and governance in that process. A lot of AI analytics fails, not because the model can't write SQL, right? AI can write SQL very well, actually, but because it lacks the right context to understand the business. Context includes things like metric definitions, business logic, up-to-date signal about the data's quality and freshness. Not having that information creates a context gap for the model. This means you can't just point your LLM at raw data because without structured context and defined semantics, it gets lost in the schema and ends up making things up, right? It can generate incorrect or unreliable SQL. It can invent or misapply definitions from your business and the metrics. And it creates governance and trust issues that have no clear audit trail or traceability. At the same time, all of that together drives up cost, both on the data side for queries that are being generated and ran but not correct, and on the AI consumption side, burning tokens and compute on questions that aren't generating real answers. And even if the model finds the right data, it still lacks the context to define your specific metrics, right? So, like, for example, whether sales includes returns or how you define last quarter, these are things that are specific to your organization. And if it doesn't have that, it's forced to just guess or make up that logic. And there's real consequences to that for the business, right? Stakeholders lose trust in AI-powered analytics because outputs are either incorrect or inconsistent. Risk goes up because you can't easily see or govern how data is being queried or interpreted. Token and compute cost, again, both on the warehouse and on the AI side, kind of expands without adding any business value. And all of this ultimately stalls AI adoption because people don't trust the answers or the pipeline that's powering the answers behind the scenes. So this is exactly where dbt and Omni come in. to close that context gap, right? Ensuring that your AI is grounded in a single source of truth that's correct, fresh, and validated, rather than guessing the names of tables and creating ad hoc joins on the fly. And so DBT is the source of truth, right? It provides structured context layer that centralizes governed analytics and context in one place. That place is version controlled, has models and tests, has defined metrics, contains end-to-end lineage, also visibility into things like data freshness and documentation. So when Omni's AI asks a question like, what was Q4 revenue? It will use the approved revenue definition. It will use preferred and trusted models. And it will lead on tests and freshness rather than just inventing things on its own, creating join paths and leading to incorrect results. And with dbt's MCP server, you can expose that metadata and governance consistently across multiple AI systems, right? So whether you're connecting to OpenAI, whether you're connecting to Omni's AI, whether you have an internal agent, any other agentic workflow or model, all of these will use the same metric definitions and the same guardrails to generate the answer. And so the result is reliable, reusable SQL, reliable AI outputs, and AI responds in a way that is auditable, right? This also results in the ability to control token cost and ultimately leads to better AI adoption. So now I'm going to pass it over to Priya Gupta, the head of data at Cribl, to talk about how she implemented trusted AI with DBT and Omni. Priya, go ahead.
So self-serve from a data perspective is really important at Cribl. Cribl as a company, when I first joined and it was 150 people, getting half the company to use data, very easy. Like people want a way to make smarter decisions, and data is a way of doing so. But now the company is close to 1,000 people. And, as a team gets to 1,000 people, we don't have the same ratio of data folks on the team as we do to company employees. And so we really have to put a lot of thought in, well, how do we not become a blocker? And how do we become an enabler of data so people can feel empowered and like they have the data to make the critical decisions that are going to help drive the right momentum for Cribl? And I'm super happy to say, because like as a company that's almost 1,000 employees, Cribl has 77% of the entire company using data. We measured this with our BI tool, and it was one of our success metrics that we continue to measure as we migrated over to a new BI tool, was to make sure we didn't lose users as we migrated to a BI tool that we felt was a better BI tool than we previously used. I also want to add that at the end of the day, these users, right, so more than 700 people who rely on data, will expect this data to be correct. So it has to be of high quality. It has to be governed. In fact, one of our success metrics last year was data quality, but data quality in the sense of data is always going to have problems. And it's not about if there's a bug or a problem with the data. It's about how can you catch it, alert the impacted folks, and then fix it before stakeholders start noticing that data quality issue themselves, because that's actually where you tend to lose trust. And so funny enough, how we measure data quality here at Cribl is we define it as the number of data quality issues found by a non-data team member. Because at the end of the day, finding data quality issues is okay. It's about who finds them and how you go about dealing with them. Kind of coming it back circle to building self-service from the ground up, that's just one aspect of it. The second aspect is like also just ensuring you have the right champions and stakeholder trainings available to ensure that everybody is set up for success. A great example is like, while we have over 700 users building inside of our BI tool, using our BI tool, about 150 of them are building dashboards. On top of that, we have invested our relationships to help certain functions like our marketing team and our people team, who are very heavy data users, to build out their own functions. Like think of like BI analytics, to put in practice the hub and spoke model. At the end of the day, like those folks end up providing much better information to their functions than we could ever get into the weeds of. I kind of taking this back to why we're here today, right? This is why we've invested not just in the right BI tool, but also the right transformation tool to allow us to set everything up. Because, and I'm going to go into this a little bit later, we do ingest data from a lot of different places. So when we think about the Cribl tech stack, two of the core components after we ingest data, which we ingest data from about 38 different sources, and we actually have a backlog of 30 plus more, is all about transforming it. In our raw database, we have about 3,000 to 4,000 tables, but we don't want to expose all those tables to our BI tool because one, business context is lost. Two, that's just an absurd amount of tables, and then you have to rely on everyone knowing how to connect those tables or understanding relationships. We'd rather do it for you. And three is really just to reduce redundancies to ensure that we can make our data a single source of truth as possible. We use dbt for all the transformation, and actually no table is exposed to our end users in our BI tool or even our hub and spoke functions that query our database directly unless they go through dbt. And like I said, this allows us to, one, govern that layer. We make sure that all metrics and as much semantic knowledge lives in dbt more so than it actually lives in our BI tool, so that everything remains single source of truth. When people want to know how many opportunities are open, they all will always get the same answer because they're most likely using the same table. And that same table isn't like Salesforce reporting where you get inundated with hundreds and thousands of columns. It has the right columns you need to make decisions about the business. And it's reliable because, of course, we are tracking those tables extensively and we have our observability tool running on top of it. And this brings me to our BI tool, where most of our users, actually all of them, pretty much live and breathe every single month to find data, to make decisions, to create momentum for Cribl. And so we recently migrated from Looker into Omni. And we were a Looker customer for 4 years. It was the first tool I bought when I came over here to Cribl. And at the end of the day, people might switch tools because it's expensive. For us, it wasn't about being expensive. It was about, well, do we get more value? In fact, most people at Cribl love Looker, but it's kind of one of those things where you really don't know where you're missing, and you don't know what value you unlock if you don't know what you are or you are not missing. And so we actually looked at several different vendors, Omni being one of them, just to look and see, well, is there anything better than our current offering? Is there anything better than anything that could provide us more value that we just didn't have today? And in the demo phase, we were really, really impressed with Omni's AI readiness, the ability to use all the enrichment we have in our layer in dbt, like YAML files and descriptions, and be able to push that to Omni, where you can see everything in one place and also can be used in the AI to make it intelligent, really, really appealed to us. Not to mention, as I mentioned before, we have hub and spoke teams, and our spoke teams do not have access to dbt. And so while they can see our dbt repos, now actually in the Omni developer layer, they can actually see all the dbt models right there. We didn't have that type of integration with our previous tool. I'll also add that it just really I think the intuitive features of Omni was also very attractive to us. Our previous tools also very click, a lot of please use these calculations that can only be used in our tool. Whereas in Omni, you get Excel-like, G Sheet-like functionality, which vibed really well because we are a Google Drive shop here at Cribl. 1 second. Apologies for that. In addition, it also allowed us to give people more abilities to build, creating their own measures without having to rely on the data team. So like I said, our number one goal at the end of the day when we're trying to scale with all these users is to not be a blocker for users. So as I mentioned already, our tech stack is all about getting our data into Snowflake so we can transform it with dbt. And then throw that all into Omni as a single source of truth and governed layer where folks can not only build dashboards, ask questions of data, but also use AI to generate, but also use the AI that Omni supports to query that data reliably. We have a lot of initiatives tied around making the AI in Omni better, because at the end of the day, AI only works as good as your data is. So is your data well described? Like, do you have descriptions for every single column? Have you transcribed your own business logic? A great example is like over here at Cribl, we use a tool called Jira. And Jira, there's a close date for a Jira ticket. At Cribl, though, we don't call it that. We call it resolve date. And it's because there's so many different resolved types of statuses that the close date actually doesn't work for us here at Cribl. And so we're able to do that and create that field in dbt based off our own lens of the business, and then expose that in Omni, and then use the dbt YAML files to describe to Omni how we created it, why we look at the business, and even different synonyms and words and terminology people can use. Like, maybe folks don't know resolve date means close date, so they might just use close date. And in Omni, we can actually attach synonyms as well, so the AI knows that when people say close date, they might mean resolve date or vice versa. As we invested in Omni, it became really imperative that we ensure our dbt layer was well documented. So I can't be the only person in the room who knows that the things folks will more likely to prioritize over anything else is documentation. And my team is no different. I still love it. Like, those first few models we created and how well documented those were, like, so wonderful. But the reality is like, when you're a 5 model, when you have 5 dbt models, it's really easy to document. When you have, like, I don't know, 230, it's a lot more difficult to keep it documented. But also, like, once you create documentation, to go back and actually update it. Hey, close date means this now because we have changed our entire process. And so that was actually a second problem we had with documentation, is like, we have documentation, but then how do we keep it updated? What we ended up doing is, like most business teams today, we said, is there a way we can do this with AI? If we can pass context to AI, could we actually automatically document descriptions for fields, descriptions for new tables and models, and even descriptions for schemas, and consistently update them as the models are updated and changed in the future? And so one of the data engineers on my team, his name is Nathan, really incredible data engineer. He created what I like to call promptception over here, where we essentially pass to OpenAI all of our fields and business logic, which are basically dbt models, how they're being created, even column names, and generates descriptions that are actually useful. Now, I will say the end product is wonderful. When we first started it, yeah, there was a lot of learned lessons. There was a lot of hallucinations. There's all the fun things you run into when we start using AI at scale. And we learned a lot from that. We learned, for instance, that we had to paginate columns. Like, if I have, I don't know, 50 columns in a model, I couldn't pass all those 50 columns into an OpenAI prompt and expect it to give me accurate descriptions for all 50 columns. We found that we actually had a limit of like almost about 20, and then the AI agent would start exaggerating. The second is, depending on your structures of how you build your dbt models, like some people on my team, they use asterisks, which is like a select all columns. Well, guess what? Like, the reality is, like, what does select star mean when you pass it to an agent? They don't know. So you actually have to use lineage and actually figure out, like, well, and actually figure out, before you even pass it to an agent, what the select star columns are and what they're pulling. It's it was a journey. And actually, funny enough, like, our first attempt in using OpenAI, and we actually have like 3 or 4 different prompts that run to create all the descriptions for fields first, then for the model, and then for the schema just cost us $20 to run it on about, I think we ran it on 100, we had 150 models at this point. The ROI on that was incredible. I will say we have matured that since then. We actually even just recently created like a synonym database. Not database. That sounds fancy. It's not fancy at all. It's just a synonym JSON so that when we use like characteristic language here at Cribl, that might not mean anything else somewhere else, we're able to associate that in our downstream tooling, and also in our the agent can also make those associations. Like a great example is like we use Cribl Cloud. We also call Cribl Cloud by a particular nuanced name just because it was a randomly generated name. And so like how would someone know that this randomly generated name means Cribl Cloud unless they knew and had all the context of how Cribl operates internally? And so that was built to particularly address this case, but kind of bringing it back, we've definitely matured the project since we first developed it. And now it's actually a CI/CD pipeline that automatically gets triggered every single time someone creates a commit to our DBT repository where all our DBT models live. In fact, like just this morning, I made a change. I added a brand new model. I committed it. I created and once I committed it in my branch, the agents had already created a new YAML file with descriptions for that model, created a description for that model, and had also made suggestions for updating the entire description of the schema itself where possible, because of a model I introduced. And what's really wonderful is then as we kind of go into code review with the team, where the team like reviews my model and tells me if there's any changes I need to make or what's or not, all of that metadata has already been created. And once we merge it, it automatically gets updated into our main branch for our repository, which automatically goes to Omni. My favorite button to click in Omni is the sync metadata button, which you just click it and then all the descriptions and everything that has changed automatically gets updated. And those updates, you don't really realize it until you have like AI running on everything, essentially on all your data. But those updates are critical for making your AI useful. Because like at the end of the day, and like I said before, your AI is only as useful as the governance you have underneath it. And this allows us to have updated governance. It's also, I don't know about you, it's also a lot easier to correct something that's already written versus like having a blank slate and having to write it yourself, which is also a great thing. In pull request review, we can actually review all the descriptions ourselves and see, is there anything we want to change? Like this is just the first pass on OpenAI. I will say OpenAI, and also because our prompts are very good, and also we've added the synonym library and everything, very good, like surprisingly very good. And I will say, like, this is only just going to get better over time. I got a question after we did this and presented this at DBT where someone said, is this actually good? And my response to that person was, it's better than nothing, which is what we had before. We had no descriptions. And so when you go from nothing to something, then you just keep iterating on that something. How do I make that something better and hit different milestones? We're constantly learning on this, and we're constantly flagging. And I'll go into this in a second, where Omni actually gives us the ability to look at what responses AI is giving. And we also can collect feedback from people on if the AI is actually responding well or not. And essentially, by using these features in Omni, we can actually go back and iterate on these other initiatives we had. Like the auto doc is just one of them. We also have other initiatives regarding like making our AI and Omni better, but it's really valuable for us to just constantly get better, because if we keep getting better and we keep getting better, and particularly in these initiatives that impact scale, then it's going to help us scale as our company gets bigger and bigger and we add more and more data users. So getting to the AI portion of Omni, it's really cool. Like Omni lets you ask quick questions. They give you insights. One of my favorite new features has been their AI summary visualization, where you can literally just pass the data points. I also like love updating. There's like a context window that you can help specify, so the AI summary is always updated. But it's like every time you come to a dashboard, if there's updated data, the summary gets updated. That's the kind of future I want to live in, and I want everybody at Cribl to live in, because we should always be making decisions and change our summaries based off new data that's been introduced. And if it's the right, and Omni does this really, really well. It's really great to see people use it. I think I want to say we have about 20% of the company using Omni AI every single month. It's actually our success metric to get that number to 25%. And then eventually, and like I mentioned, like Omni lets you measure all this, our next success metric is going to be that AI is working, of those 25% who are using it, how many of those users are using, is the AI working correctly on, right? Obviously, you want that to be 100%. And so how can we get it as close to 100% as possible? And I love this image here that we have about how we learn from AI, where we can actually collect feedback from people. Like, did AI actually give you the right response, or did it not give you the right response? Because there's always, we're all data and the analyst here, right? Like there's always trends, right? It's always the one object with the hallucinated descriptions that gave the incorrect answer. And it's really cool to be able to fix that and then see people start getting the correct answer, or even use these kind of questions as a new starting base of areas maybe you have to work on, or even identify if there's other problems. Maybe the slice of data people wanted just didn't exist, and so Omni itself wasn't able to do it. I found that Omni is really good at what we give it. And so there's some things intrinsically where it won't know what it doesn't know, and it's because we haven't given it that knowledge. And I'm looking forward to a bright future with Omni. One of my favorite things to do with Omni is just to track the release notes, because they come out with different AI features all the time. Part of the reason why we migrated from our previous BI tool to Omni is because of its innovation. They move quickly in a good way, because you always want to stay on top of trends and what's going on, because ideally those trends give you us a lot of business value, and we want to keep bringing that business value to our users. Because if we get value, if someone can make a decision one day sooner because they have the correct tools accessible to make them that much more productive, then those are the right tools to invest in. Next for us, especially when it comes to AI, is thinking now more about, well, how do we consolidate AI, especially across all of our tools? Omni has an MCP server, DBT has an MCP server, and we're looking forward to, I don't know, consolidating those and seeing like what more can we extrapolate for our users to really just leverage the most out of AI. And I know the team has more information on that, so I'll pass it off to them.
Thanks, Priya. Super exciting to hear how Cribl is using Omni and DBT together. And now I thought I'd take a little time to talk about how the Omni integration with DBT works in a little bit more detail. So first, to kind of set the picture here, the idea of the Omni integration with DBT is that whether you're modeling in DBT or building a dashboard in Omni, there needs to be a really tightly integrated workflow. And really, there should be seamless handoff between these two tools. And as much as possible, we should try to make them operate as if they were in one single unified workflow. So we try to think of every possible way to do that within Omni and sort of build the integration to allow that to happen. So there's a lot of little features that we built to enable this. And that's everything from syncing metadata in both directions to ensuring that you can sort of look at your environments in DBT and in Omni consistently and do development in a consistent way. And then finally integrating with the DBT semantic layer and all of the other features and functionality of DBT, so that when you are using Omni, you are building off of the same data model and you're getting all the rich metadata from that data model that you've defined in DBT. So those are the features, but what does that actually enable, right? And so the first thing that enables is synchronized development. So that means you can develop something in DBT. You can use your DBT development schema or database to run your DBT models, materialize them in your development environment, and then you can actually from within Omni point Omni over to that environment and make changes to the Omni data model or Omni dashboards and any aspect of your Omni configuration pointing to that same DBT development environment without actually impacting anything in production. So this can all be done within a branch in DBT and a corresponding branch within Omni and sandbox structures in your data warehouse so that you can actually do this development and do it with zero risk and zero downtime, right? So you can go through, Omni has a content validator that allows you that will detect any breakages of references to fields or views, and you can run that in this environment as well. So what this really means is you no longer have to sort of cross your fingers and pray when you make a DBT change, waiting to see what dashboards broke, right? You can do all that in a sandbox and then go ahead and check everything is working, check everything looks correct, and then do a merge of your DBT environment and your DBT branch and your Omni branch at the same time. So this is huge. It really solves a problem that a lot of teams struggle with without it. Additionally, it allows you to just model once, right? So if you write a model in DBT and you define foreign keys and you write out the various even descriptions about how that model what that model means and how it is to be used, Omni will automatically read this information in and populate it within your Omni data model and all the metadata within Omni, so that when users go to actually use that data in Omni, they're leveraging the same structures that you built in DBT, and you don't have to redefine things or write them twice. Similarly, you can actually, when you write that documentation in DBT, you're adding context about how a view works, about how a field is defined, and that context will populate right up into your dashboards in Omni, right? So if you have a definition that describes how a field is to be interpreted, like this example here, then that will populate directly when that field is used in Omni. And this turns out to be super important, especially when you're using AI, because AI can make a lot of great inferences based on that additional metadata, right? It can understand how to filter a field based on descriptions about the types of data that are in that field, for example. And you can also go in the other direction, right? So if you are a business user who maybe doesn't spend a whole lot of time in DBT directly, you can do a lot of this type of work within Omni, whether it's defining new fields like dimensions or measures or new calculations, and then critically also describing those fields, right? Adding the business context about what they mean. That stuff it tends to be work that a lot of our business users like to do in Omni, and then they can push a pull request over to GitHub in order to send that to their analytics engineering team or data engineering team, who can then incorporate it into their DBT model if they think it's appropriate. So it really allows sort of a seamless handoff between the users who are spending more of their time in the BI tool and those that are spending more of their time in DBT and the analytics and data engineering side of the house. And again, critically, most important thing here is that we're keeping these things consistent, right? That if you have a definition in one place, you don't have to redefine it elsewhere, and it's consistent with the definition in the other place. And then all of this metadata also enables us to build trust at the point of consumption, which is the dashboard or report typically, right? And so in addition to syncing metadata about the model, Omni can also push over exposures to DBT automatically. So if you are using exposures to index your data lineage and catalog it, you can actually, you can understand on the DBT side exactly what each dashboard depends on and what the ramifications of a change would be. And then additionally use this DBT's incredible embeddable tiles to show within your dashboards exactly the status of that data and confirm that everything is fresh and clean and accurate. And then additionally, you're able to you can actually through the syncing of those exposures, that DBT side of the house then can know, right, what is the change? What is this change going to impact, right? Like, if I go and change the definition of a field, am I going to break a dashboard, right? So this exposure syncing is really a huge benefit for both sides, where the DBT side can actually help. We can expose into Omni all that great information about the quality and status and freshness of the data, and then on the DBT side, folks working on the DBT models can understand the impact of the changes they're about to make. So those are some of the great problems that the Omni integration with DBT solves. One of the things that brings this all together is AI, right? And AI, really great at looking at data across different systems. And when you connect tools like MCP servers to your AI can do an incredible job of leveraging those things together. Okay, so now I'm going to show a demo of how this all comes together. And we're going to use the Omni MCP server together with the DBT MCP server in a platform called Tines to actually use an AI chat to kind of explore data and think about the metadata and lineage behind it. So I will share my screen. Okay, so let's start by asking a question about our data. Analyze orders by region. So this is going to start by using the Omni MCP server. And the Omni MCP server, the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to send over a prompt that's going to have Omni choose like, what topic is this question about, right? And that's going to help us sort of guide the question towards the right data model within Omni. So it's picked the topic, and now it's getting the orders. Oh, and it's got a really snazzy table that's showing us the breakdown of orders and total order amount by region. And we can iterate on this, right? We can say, me average order value. And this will again go back to Omni and modify that query to get some more data. Great, and now we can see the average order value. And as you can see, you can kind of iterate on this to your heart's content. And so one of the other things that you can do, and this is where we can go ask the DBT MCP server is, maybe I'm an analytics engineer and some of these numbers don't look quite right. So where did this data come from? Great, and now you can see that the chat is going over to the DBT MCP server. It is looking at the models to understand the lineage behind this query. Oh, it's also looking at the exposures behind it as well. So great, now we have a full description of the data flow here and the lineage of the data that's going into this analysis, right? So super cool and really great way to kind of debug the work we're doing. Another thing that we can do is, within Omni, we actually expose back the queries and the prompts that your users are asking. So, here's an example. If I flip over here, and here are some sort of past prompts that have been asked of this data, right? And you can see, how is this cost sum being calculated? How many columns store numeric data? And so what this allows you to do, and really one of the superpowers here, again, I talked earlier about the integration. The whole goal there is to be able to iterate quickly in a nice, smooth workflow between Omni and DBT. And in the AI workflow, the critical thing to do here is to sort of tune your data model and your context to answer questions accurately, right? And really common example here is terminology, right? Like if I noticed that somebody in this example was asking about obsolescence risk. I don't know what that means, but I can go look it up and actually inform the data model about what that means and how to calculate it, so that the next time somebody asks that question, the answer will be ready and the AI will know how to interpret it. So this is one of the this is the workflow we see our users in Omni use. Is they'll create their data model, add a bunch of context, and then review the questions that are being asked. And also those reviews, those questions, you can have your users give thumbs up, thumbs down, and feedback on those, and look for those cases where the AI doesn't have all the right context, and then go iterate on your data model, whether in Omni or in DBT or in both, to improve the quality of the questions and answers. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand it back over to the DBT team to wrap things up.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Priya, as well. So with DBT and Omni, the cycle is closed. Build trusted data with DBT and explore that data and access it with Omni, and trust everywhere. Where to go next? We've added a few resources for you here. On the left, we've teamed up with O'Reilly on a structure for intelligence report. If you scan that QR code, you'll see how modern data leaders are connecting data platforms with AI in the real world. On the right, if you want to learn more about Omni and DBT together, scan the QR code to view Omni's content and common use cases, and to get connected with their team for a demo. There is still a DBT expert in the chat if there are any final questions that come up. But other than that, thank you again for being here. We certainly enjoyed presenting to you today, and have a great rest of your day.